My name is Autumn Bailey, 32, and last Christmas changed my life forever. I drove 3 hours with expensive gifts and homemade food to surprise my family. When Mom opened the door, her smile vanished. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong house," she said coldly. Confused and hurt, I stood frozen on the porch until she closed the door in my face. I returned to my car, gifts untouched, and cried like never before. If you're watching this from somewhere you feel unwelcome this holiday season, know you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button and drop a heart in the comments if you've ever felt excluded by those who should love you most. Let's get through this together. I grew up in a small Midwest town where appearances mattered more than reality. From the outside, we looked like a typical American family. Dad worked at the local factory, Mom stayed home, and my younger brother Riley and I attended the public school down the street. But behind our front door, things were different. My father struggled with alcoholism for as long as I can remember. He wasn't violent, just emotionally absent, spending evenings slumped in his recliner with a beer, watching TV until he dozed off. My mother compensated by pouring all her attention into my brother. Riley was the golden child, athletic, charming, and the spitting image of my father before alcohol took its toll. I was always the odd one out. While Riley received new sports equipment and the latest video games, I got practical items, school supplies, sensible shoes, and occasionally a book. I learned early that the fastest way to gain approval was through achievement, so I threw myself into academics. My straight A's earned brief nods of acknowledgement, but never the enthusiastic celebration that came with Riley's mediocre performance on the football field. "Riley needs the encouragement," my mother would explain when I questioned the disparity. "You're already so self-motivated, Autumn. You'll be fine no matter what." And I was fine because I had to be. By 16, I was working after school at the local grocery store, saving every penny for college. My parents made it clear that while they'd help Riley with tuition because he needs sports to get his foot in the door, I would need to figure it out myself. "You're smart enough to get scholarships," they reasoned, as if my intelligence somehow justified their neglect. College was a revelation. Away from my family's dynamics, I discovered that my work ethic and academic abilities were actually exceptional, not just expected. I took on 2 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, sharing a tiny apartment with 3 other girls to keep costs down. Meanwhile, Riley flunked out after 2 semesters at the state university, where our parents had paid for his single dorm room and meal plan. I graduated with honors and $40,000 in student loan debt, but also with a job offer from a financial firm in Chicago. The day I moved to the city was the first time I saw something like pride in my father's bloodshot eyes. "You always were determined," he said, almost to himself. My career progress was steady and impressive. I started as an entry-level analyst and worked my way up to senior financial advisor within 7 years. My income grew accordingly, and 5 years ago, when my father lost his job due to downsizing, I offered to help with their mortgage payment, just until he found new work. He never did find steady employment again, and my temporary assistance became a permanent arrangement. Soon, I was covering not just the mortgage, but also utility bills, car payments, and the credit card debt that seemed to grow despite my warnings about frivolous spending. When Riley moved back home after his 3rd failed attempt at college, I began paying for his online classes too. "It's just until he figures things out," my mother assured me during our weekly phone calls, which grew shorter and more focused on financial matters as time passed. Despite becoming the family breadwinner, I noticed a strange pattern developing. Family gatherings became less frequent, and when they did occur, I received last-minute invitations or heard about them afterward through Facebook photos. "We didn't want to bother you," my mother would explain. "We know how busy you are with your important job." Last Thanksgiving, I drove home only to find the house empty. They had gone to my aunt's place without telling me. When I called, surprised and hurt, my mother sounded flustered. "Oh, we thought you couldn't make it. You work so much. Later that evening, Riley posted photos with the caption, "Annual Family Thanksgiving. Wouldn't miss it for the world." I spent that holiday alone in a diner, questioning why I continued to support people who seemed to want my money, but not my presence. Still, they were family, and breaking those ties seemed unthinkable. I resolved to make Christmas different, to arrive unannounced with gifts and food, forcing my way back into the family circle through generosity and holiday spirit. That decision led me to my mother's doorstep on Christmas Day, arms laden with packages, heart full of hope, only to hear those words that would change everything. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong house." After my mother closed the door in my face, I somehow managed to drive to the nearest hotel without crashing. My vision blurred with tears as I checked in, the cheerful "Merry Christmas" from the receptionist feeling like salt in an open wound. The standard room cost 3 times the normal rate due to the holiday, but money was the last thing on my mind. I collapsed onto the bed, still wearing my coat, and stared at the ceiling. The festively wrapped gifts I'd hauled from my car sat in a sad pile by the door, an expensive watch for Dad, a cashmere sweater for Mom, and the latest gaming system for Riley. Hours of careful selection and wrapping, now meaningless. My phone buzzed at 7:42 p.m. Riley's name flashed on the screen. I considered ignoring it, but answered on the 4th ring. "Hey sis," he said, his voice artificially casual. "Where'd you go?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A pause. "Yeah, about that." He cleared his throat. "Don't be upset, but you know we couldn't let you in." The air left my lungs. "Couldn't let me in? To the house I pay for." "It's not like that," Riley said, sounding annoyed. "It's Christmas, and we just wanted, just us. Family time." The implication that I wasn't family struck like a physical blow. I gripped the phone tighter, focusing on keeping my voice steady. "I see. Well, thanks for clarifying." My professional tone. "Good. I'm glad you get it," Riley said, sounding relieved. "Maybe we can do something next week or whatever." Then came the sound that would change everything, rustling, movement, but no disconnect tone. Riley had failed to properly end the call. "Is she mad?" I heard my mother's voice, slightly distant. "Nah, she's fine," Riley replied, his voice fainter now as the phone moved away from his face. "She said she understands." "Well, she should," my mother sniffed. "He still thinks helping with rent means he's automatically included in everything. Christmas is for family, not bank accounts." A male laugh, my father. "At least the bank account showed up on time this month. Unlike last month's processing delay." "Sure, Gary." My mother giggled. "Don't be mean. She's very generous." "Yeah, and she better stay that way," Riley added. "My tuition payment is due next week." More laughter, then the sound of clinking glasses. They were toasting, celebrating Christmas and their successful exclusion of the person funding their lifestyle. I sat perfectly still, phone pressed to my ear, listening as they discussed their plans for the evening. They mentioned the turkey, which I had offered to bring, exchanging presents, many of which I had funded, and watching Christmas movies on the large-screen TV that I had purchased for my father's birthday. After about 3 minutes, there was a fumbling sound, then Riley's voice came through clearly again. "Oh shit." The call disconnected. My phone immediately rang again. "Riley." I declined the call. He tried again. And again. Then text messages started flooding in. "Autumn, I think the call didn't hang up." That wasn't what it sounded like. "Call me back. You're taking things the wrong way. Mom's really upset that you misunderstood." I turned off notifications and placed my phone face down on the nightstand. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to really see the pattern of behavior that I had been financing. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold clarity that felt almost like relief. They had never forgotten to invite me to family gatherings. They had deliberately excluded me. They had never been too busy to return my calls. They simply hadn't wanted to speak to me unless they needed something. The processing delays on bill payments weren't bank errors. They were testing how far they could push before I noticed or objected. I was not a daughter or a sister. I was an ATM with feelings they occasionally had to manage. As this realization crystallized, I felt something inside me harden. The hurt was still there, an ache behind my ribs, but now it was accompanied by something unfamiliar, anger. Not the fleeting irritation I sometimes felt at their thoughtlessness, but a deep, righteous fury at years of manipulation and disrespect. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. It was time to see exactly what my place in this family had cost me. The banking app's cheerful interface seemed inappropriate given my emotional state. "Happy Holidays, Autumn," the banner read, followed by a breakdown of my recent transactions. I navigated to the bill payment section where the full extent of my financial entanglement with my family became painfully clear. The monthly mortgage payment on my parents' house, $1,850. Utilities averaging $380 per month. 2 car payments totaling $956. Credit card minimum payments usually around $500, though they fluctuated based on my family's spending. Riley's online course tuition payments of $2,300 per semester. Occasional emergency transfers ranging from $200 to $2,000 for everything from car repairs to dental work. I opened a spreadsheet and began documenting everything, going back through 5 years of statements. The totals were staggering. Mortgage payments, $111,000. Utilities, $22,000. Car payments, $57,360. Credit card payments, medical expenses, $18,500. Riley's education, $27,600. Emergency funds, $34,000. Total, $301,260. Over $300,000. The number stared back at me, a monument to my own naivety. That was more than half of what I had earned after taxes during that period. No wonder my retirement savings were so meager despite my substantial salary. No wonder I still lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment while my colleagues purchased condos and vacation properties. I scrolled through my text message history, finding patterns I had previously ignored. The friendly check-ins that always preceded financial requests. The effusive gratitude that lasted exactly as long as it took for the money to transfer. The sudden emergencies that coincided with luxury purchases that appeared on social media days later. 3 months ago, my mother had called in tears about a roof leak that needed immediate repair, $4,800 that I transferred without question. 2 weeks later, she posted photos of her newly redecorated living room, complete with designer furniture and artwork. When I asked about it, she mentioned finding amazing deals at estate sales. I opened Instagram and navigated to my brother's profile. His most recent post, timestamped just 30 minutes ago, showed our family around the Christmas tree. Nothing better than family Christmas traditions. Read the caption. The gifts piled underneath were wrapped in the same paper I had noticed during my brief glimpse into the house, expensive paper from a boutique stationery store in Chicago that I had mentioned to my mother last month. In the background of the photo, partially visible, was a new leather sectional sofa that I knew cost at least $3,000 because I had considered buying the same one for my apartment before deciding it was too extravagant. I zoomed in on their faces, relaxed, happy, not at all like people who had just cruelly turned away a family member. My father held a glass of what appeared to be expensive scotch, another of my subsidized habits. My mother wore the diamond earrings I had given her last Christmas, which she had claimed to save for special occasions. Riley sported an Apple Watch that looked remarkably like the one I had ordered for his graduation present when he finally completed his degree 3 months ago. They were enjoying the fruits of my labor while deliberately excluding me from their lives. The realization was both devastating and liberating. I had been living in denial, telling myself that my financial support was an investment in family relationships that would eventually improve. Now I saw the truth. They had no intention of ever seeing me as more than a source of income. I continued scrolling through photos, finding more evidence of my family's duplicity. A weekend trip to a lakeside resort taken, while my mother told me they couldn't meet for lunch because they were helping a sick neighbor. A new gaming setup in Riley's room purchased the same week he asked me for money to cover essential textbooks. My father's fishing equipment upgraded shortly after I paid for what he described as critical car repairs. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A screenshot Riley had accidentally posted and quickly deleted, but that remained visible in my cache. It showed a text conversation between him and my mother. "Mom, did you ask Autumn about the extra $1 for the Florida trip?" Riley, "Not yet. Waiting till after she pays my tuition. Don't want to push too hard at once." Mom, smart. "She's been asking about Christmas again. So persistent." Riley, "I'll handle it. Tell her we're still figuring out plans. By December 20th, she'll be too busy to come anyway." Mom, "Perfect. Love you, my clever boy." They had been planning to exclude me from Christmas all along, while simultaneously extracting as much money as possible. The calculated nature of their manipulation left me breathless. This wasn't thoughtlessness or poor communication. It was strategic exploitation of my desire for family connection. I closed all the apps and sat in silence, processing what I had discovered. The hurt was evolving into something else, a cold, clear determination. For years, I had allowed my desire for family approval to override my financial well-being and self-respect. That ended tonight. I opened my laptop and began making a plan. The hotel room felt smaller as the night progressed, walls closing in with each revelation. After discovering the extent of my family's financial exploitation, I found myself alternating between sobbing and staring blankly at the wall. Around midnight, I finally called the one person I knew would understand. "Leah? I'm sorry to call so late on Christmas." "Autumn? What's wrong?" My best friend's voice was instantly alert despite the hour. I explained everything, the door shutting in my face, the overheard conversation, the years of financial manipulation. Leah listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds of disbelief or outrage. "Those absolute parasites," she finally said when I finished. "I've been telling you for years something wasn't right, but this is beyond anything I imagined." "I know. I feel so stupid." "Stop that right now," Leah said firmly. "You're not stupid. You're kind and generous and wanted to believe in your family. They're the ones who should be ashamed, not you." Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from an abyss of self-recrimination. "What do I do now, Leah?" "First, you protect yourself financially. Tonight, before they realize what's happening." Leah's practical advice gave me a framework for action. We stayed on the phone as I methodically began dismantling the financial ties that bound me to my family's exploitation. First, I logged into my online banking and canceled all automatic payments to my parents' mortgage company, utility providers, and credit card companies. Each cancellation required confirmation, asking if I was sure I wanted to stop these recurring payments. I had never felt more certain clicking yes. Next came the joint credit card accounts I had foolishly established to help my family with emergencies. I called the 24-hour customer service lines, explaining that I needed to remove myself as an authorized user and primary payer on accounts held by Gary, Susan, and Riley Bailey. The customer service representatives asked few questions. Working on Christmas night, they seemed eager to process my requests quickly. "I need to make sure they can't add me back or open new accounts in my name," I told the third credit card representative. "I understand completely," she said, her voice sympathetic. "I'm adding a fraud alert to your profile that will require additional verification for any new accounts or changes." By 2 a.m., I had frozen joint checking accounts, canceled automatic payments, removed myself from credit card obligations, and documented every step with confirmation numbers and screenshots. I created a comprehensive spreadsheet detailing every dollar I had provided, every account I had paid, and every financial promise my family had extracted. You should talk to a lawyer, Leah suggested, just to make sure you're protected if they try to claim you promised ongoing support. You're right, I agreed, adding it to my growing to-do list. First thing after the holiday. With the immediate financial ties severed, I drafted an email to my family. Leah helped me keep it factual and unemotional. As of December 25th, I have terminated all financial support previously provided to Gary, Susan, and Riley Bailey. This includes mortgage payments, utility bills, credit card payments, car payments, and educational expenses. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Any future communication should be directed to my lawyer, whom I will designate after the holiday. Autumn Bailey. My finger hovered over the send button as doubt crept in. Am I overreacting? Maybe I misunderstood. Play the recording again, Leah suggested. I had saved the accidental voicemail from Riley's failed hang-up. Hearing my family's callous words and laughter one more time solidified my resolve. I pressed send, then blocked their numbers on my phone. What now? I asked Leah. Now you start living for yourself, not them, she said. Beginning with making this the best Christmas you've ever had, without those ungrateful leeches. After ending the call with Leah, I did something I'd never allowed myself before. I called the front desk and upgraded to the hotel's best available suite, complete with a fireplace and jacuzzi tub. The night manager, perhaps sensing my emotional state, sent up a complimentary bottle of champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries. Soaking in the luxurious tub, sipping champagne, I began to imagine a life unconstrained by my family's constant financial demands. The mortgage on a riverfront condo I'd been eyeing but dismissed as impractical. The international vacation I'd been postponing for someday. The nonprofit work I was passionate about but couldn't commit to because my extra income was already allocated. For the first time in years, I fell asleep with a sense of possibility rather than obligation. My last thought before drifting off was that this Christmas, painful as it was, might be the gift of freedom I never knew I needed. I awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, momentarily disoriented before remembering the previous day's events and my late-night room upgrade. The king-sized bed enveloped me in comfort that stood in stark contrast to my emotional state. For a brief, peaceful moment, I forgot why I was in a hotel on December 26th instead of my family's home. Then reality came rushing back, along with the notification light blinking insistently on my phone. I had turned the sound off before sleeping but hadn't fully blocked incoming messages. Taking a deep breath, I picked up the device to assess the damage. 61 missed calls, 38 voicemails, over 100 text messages, dozens of emails, all from my family members with timestamps starting shortly after I had sent my termination of support notice and continuing throughout the night. The first texts from Riley were aggressive. What the hell is this email? You can't just cut us off without warning. Call me back right now. You're being completely unreasonable. My mother's initial messages took a different approach. Autumn, honey, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We love you so much. Please call us to talk about this. Your father is very upset. You know his heart isn't strong. Family doesn't do this to family. That last message from my mother triggered a bitter laugh. Family doesn't do this to family. Apparently, shutting a door in your daughter's face on Christmas was acceptable family behavior, but withdrawing financial support was unforgivable. As the night had progressed, the messages grew more desperate. Riley's texts shifted from angry to panicked. My tuition payment is scheduled for January 3rd. You have to pay it. What am I supposed to tell the university? You're ruining my life over a stupid misunderstanding. My mother's tactics evolved from gentle concern to overt manipulation. I don't think you understand what you're doing to this family. Your father might lose his medical insurance if we can't pay the premium. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Even my father, who rarely communicated directly with me, had left several voicemails. I steeled myself and played the first one. Autumn, it's Dad. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this little tantrum needs to stop. Your mother is in tears, and Riley is worried sick about his education. Call us back immediately. Little tantrum. As if reclaiming my financial autonomy after years of exploitation was equivalent to a child's meltdown over a denied toy. I deleted the remaining voicemails without listening to them. Most surprising were the messages from extended family members who rarely contacted me. From Aunt Patricia, Susie told me what you're doing. I always thought you were such a nice girl. Disappointed in you. From Uncle Robert, family helps family. Period. Man up and fix this. From Cousin Jennifer, OMG, why are you being so mean to Uncle Gary and Aunt Susie? Not cool. It was clear my mother had mobilized the entire family against me, likely presenting a version of events that cast me as an ungrateful daughter, arbitrarily punishing her loving parents. None of them mentioned the Christmas rejection or years of financial exploitation. The most alarming message came from a name I didn't recognize, Howard Brennan, identifying himself as my parents' attorney, requesting that I cease and desist these financially damaging actions and contact him immediately to avoid unnecessary legal complications. The threat of legal action, however empty it might be, sent a surge of anxiety through me. I forwarded the email to Leah, who responded within minutes. Don't panic. They're bluffing. There's no legal obligation to support adult family members unless you signed a contract, which you didn't. I'm texting you my cousin's number. She's a family law attorney who can talk to you today. I called Leah's cousin Jennifer Parks immediately, who agreed to a phone consultation despite it being the day after Christmas. After explaining the situation and sharing documentation of my voluntary financial contributions, she reassured me. They have absolutely no legal claim to your ongoing financial support. You haven't established a contract, just a voluntary arrangement that you're free to terminate at any time. The attorney's email is an intimidation tactic, nothing more. What about their claims that I'm damaging them financially by withdrawing support without warning? I asked. You're not responsible for their financial planning or lack thereof, Jennifer explained. They're adults who chose to become dependent on your voluntary assistance. That's their problem, not yours. She offered to draft a formal response to Howard Brennan, making it clear that any further attempts at legal intimidation would be met with a potential countersuit for harassment. The $500 consultation fee felt like the best money I'd ever spent. With legal concerns temporarily addressed, I ordered an extravagant room service breakfast, eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, pastries, and champagne, something I would have considered wastefully indulgent just 24 hours earlier. As I ate by the window overlooking the snow-covered hotel garden, I scrolled through social media to see how my family was publicly handling the situation. My mother had posted a vague request for prayers for our family during this difficult time, generating dozens of sympathetic comments. Riley's Instagram, previously filled with carefree party photos, now featured a somber selfie with the caption, "Sometimes the people you trust the most let you down when you need them." They were already crafting a narrative that positioned them as victims of my cruelty rather than consequences of their own actions. Part of me wanted to post the recording of their Christmas conversation, exposing their true nature to friends and extended family. But a wiser voice, one that sounded remarkably like Leah, counseled restraint. This wasn't about winning a public relations battle, it was about reclaiming my life. Instead, I posted a simple photo of my hotel breakfast with the caption, "Learning that self-care isn't selfish. Here's to new beginnings." Then I turned off notifications, determined not to let their drama consume the first day of my new life. The hotel concierge helped me arrange for a spa appointment that afternoon, another luxury I had previously denied myself while financing my family's comfort. As the massage therapist worked on muscles knotted from years of stress, I felt tears sliding silently down my face. Not tears of grief, but of release. "You're carrying a lot of tension," the therapist commented gently. "Remember to breathe." I took a deep breath, then another. For the first time in years, the air felt clean and full of possibility. The next morning, December 27th, I awoke to yet more missed calls and messages, though fewer than the previous day. My family's approach had shifted from outrage to strategic reconciliation attempts. My mother had left a voicemail that managed to be both apologetic and accusatory. "Autumn, sweetie, we're all so worried about you. This behavior isn't like you at all. I wonder if you're working too hard and need to talk to someone professional. We love you and just want things back to normal." The subtext was clear. There must be something wrong with me for standing up to their exploitation. The real me, the compliant ATM, would never cause such inconvenience. Riley's latest text revealed their growing financial panic. "The mortgage payment is due on the 1st. Mom and Dad don't have the money. What are they supposed to do? They'll lose the house because of you." My father, surprisingly, sent an email rather than calling. Its measured tone suggested my mother had probably helped compose it. "Autumn, while we're hurt by your actions, we understand you may have felt unappreciated. We're willing to discuss a more formal arrangement regarding the financial assistance you provide. Perhaps a written agreement outlining expectations on both sides would help avoid misunderstandings like the Christmas incident. Please call when you're ready to discuss terms." Terms. As if we were business partners negotiating a contract, not family members rebuilding a relationship. There was no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no genuine apology, just a tactical retreat to secure continued funding. The most revealing message came from an unexpected source, my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who had always kept a polite distance from family drama. "Autumn, I don't know exactly what happened on Christmas, but I've watched Susan take advantage of your generosity for years. She and Gary brag about it when you're not around, how they've never had it so good since you hit it big in finance. It's not right, and many of us have felt uncomfortable witnessing it. I should have said something sooner. If you need someone to talk to who understands the family dynamics, I'm here." This validation from someone inside the family circle brought fresh tears to my eyes. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. The exploitation had been so obvious that extended family members had noticed and felt uncomfortable, even if they hadn't intervened. I called Aunt Linda immediately. Our conversation lasted nearly 2 hours as she filled in gaps in my understanding of my family's behavior. "They remodeled the entire house last year," she told me. "Susan told everyone you insisted on paying for it because you felt guilty about living so far away while they struggled." "I paid for roof repairs," I said numbly. That's all I knew about. "The roof was fine, honey. They got hardwood floors, granite countertops, and a hot tub on the back deck. Gary hasn't looked for work in at least 3 years. He tells everyone his successful daughter wants him to enjoy early retirement." Each revelation felt like another piece of a puzzle I should have completed long ago. The picture now coming into focus was ugly but undeniable. "And Riley," Aunt Linda continued hesitantly. "He's not actually in school anymore. He was suspended for academic dishonesty last spring. The money you've been sending for tuition has been funding his apartment in Madison and his new girlfriend's shopping habits." This hit particularly hard. Education was sacred to me, the pathway to independence I had worked so hard to forge for myself. To discover my sacrifices were financing Riley's deception rather than his education was the final straw. "Have they always been like this?" I asked, thinking back to my childhood. Was I just too close to see it? Aunt Linda sighed. "They've always favored Riley, if that's what you mean. But the financial exploitation started after you moved to Chicago and began doing well. Success brings out people's true colors, Autumn. Yours showed generosity. Theirs showed entitlement. After thanking Aunt Linda for her honesty, I decided to check my bank accounts to ensure all the automatic payments had successfully been canceled. What I found sent a chill through me: a pending withdrawal request for $15,000 from the joint emergency account I shared with my parents, initiated at 7 a.m. that morning. I immediately called the bank's fraud department. After verifying my identity, the representative confirmed my suspicion. The withdrawal was requested in person at the Springfield branch by Susan Bailey, using her authorized access to the account. My mother had driven to the bank first thing in the morning, attempting to drain the emergency fund before I could close it. Fortunately, the representative explained, large withdrawals had a 24-hour processing period, giving me time to stop it. "I want to close this account immediately," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "I understand," the representative replied sympathetically. "The pending withdrawal will be canceled, and we can transfer the remaining balance to your personal account. Would you like to provide a reason for the closure for our records?" "Unauthorized withdrawal attempt," I said after a moment's consideration. "And family financial abuse." After handling the emergency fund situation, I spent the rest of the morning closing or restricting every financial connection I could find. I removed myself from my parents' cell phone family plan, canceled the streaming services I paid for them to use, and contacted Riley's apartment complex to inform them I would no longer be a guarantor on his lease. Each severed tie felt like removing a leech that had been steadily draining my lifeblood. By lunchtime, I was exhausted but empowered. I had reclaimed approximately $4,000 in monthly expenses, money that had been flowing out to support my family's lifestyle while I lived frugally in a small apartment, postponing my own dreams. The financial reckoning brought clarity about the future. With legal counsel's help, I drafted formal communications to each family member, detailing exactly what financial support had been terminated and explicitly stating that no future assistance would be forthcoming. These would be sent by certified mail, creating a paper trail in case legal issues arose later. I also opened a new credit monitoring service account, placing extended fraud alerts on my credit reports. If my family had been willing to attempt an unauthorized withdrawal from a joint account, I couldn't trust them not to try opening credit lines in my name. Mom just told me what you did at the bank. Real classy, Autumn. FYI, I know your social security number and online banking password. Might want to think about how badly you want this family war before things get uglier. I forwarded the threat to my lawyer and the bank's fraud department, then changed every password I had ever created. The brother I had grown up with, fought for, and supported was now threatening identity theft and financial fraud because I had stopped bankrolling his lifestyle. The revelation was painful but necessary. There was no misunderstanding to clear up, no family bond to salvage. They had seen me as nothing more than a resource to exploit, and now that the resource was gone, the pretense of affection had evaporated as well. I spent that evening researching apartments in a different neighborhood of Chicago, far from my current address that my family knew well. The idea of a fresh start, a home they had never visited, furnished with things they had never seen, felt like building a fortress around my reclaimed independence. As I scrolled through rental listings, I felt a strange mix of grief and anticipation. I was mourning the family I had thought I had while planning for a future without the family I actually had. It was confusing, painful, and oddly liberating all at once. That night, I drafted a letter I would never send, expressing everything I wished I could make my family understand. The process was cathartic, allowing me to articulate feelings I had suppressed for years. When I finished, I saved it to a private folder rather than sending it, a time capsule of pain I hoped would eventually fade. Then I did something I hadn't done since childhood. I made a wish list. Not a Christmas list or a birthday list, but a life list. Places I wanted to visit, experiences I wanted to have, goals I wanted to achieve. Without the financial burden of supporting 3 adults, These dreams suddenly seemed possible. The first item I wrote was find a family that chooses me as deliberately as I choose them. 6 months have passed since that fateful Christmas day when my mother closed the door in my face and unknowingly opened the door to my freedom. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been transformative in ways I never imagined possible. January began with practical changes. I moved into a beautiful riverside apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline, a place my family has never seen and never will. I redirected the money previously spent on their mortgage and expenses into retirement accounts, investments, and experiences I had denied myself for years. The financial difference was immediate and substantial. The emotional difference took longer to manifest. Finding a therapist specializing in family trauma was my next priority. Dr. Melissa Winters helped me understand that my family's behavior fit a classic pattern of emotional and financial abuse. What you experienced was parentification, she explained during our second session. You were forced into the role of provider while being denied the emotional benefits of family membership. That's a profound violation of trust and appropriate boundaries. Those weekly therapy sessions became anchors in the stormy sea of family fallout. My parents and Riley continued their campaign of manipulation through any channel they could access: mutual acquaintances, distant relatives, even colleagues they found on LinkedIn. Each attempt brought a mixture of guilt, anger, and eventually, as the months passed, a growing indifference that Dr. Winters assured me was healthy. Indifference isn't callousness, she explained. It's your emotional immune system protecting you from people who have proven harmful to your well-being. By March, the financial consequences of my withdrawal had become apparent in my family's lives. Through Aunt Linda, I learned that my parents had been forced to downsize, selling the house I had essentially paid for and moving into a rental apartment. Riley had dropped the pretense of education entirely and taken a job at a local warehouse. My father, facing actual financial necessity for the first time in years, had found part-time work as a grocery store cashier. These developments triggered a complex mixture of emotions: satisfaction that reality had finally asserted itself in their lives, guilt that they were struggling, and anger that they had placed themselves in this position through years of entitlement and manipulation. Dr. Winters helped me navigate these conflicting feelings without being consumed by them. You didn't create their financial situation, she reminded me. You simply stopped artificially sustaining it. What you're seeing now is the natural consequence of their choices, not your cruelty. April brought a surprise. A letter from Riley that contained the first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing I had received from any family member. Autumn, I've been angry at you for months, but working this warehouse job has made me realize some things. I never appreciated what you did for us because I never had to work for anything myself. I'm not asking for money. I just wanted to say I understand better now, and I'm sorry for taking advantage of you for so long. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations. After consulting with Dr. Winters, I responded with a brief email acknowledging his apology, but maintaining firm boundaries. I wasn't ready for reconciliation, but I recognized the value in his moment of insight. Our communication since then has been minimal but civil, occasional text messages about neutral topics, with no mention of money or family obligations. My mother's approach evolved differently. After months of escalating emotional manipulation failed to produce results, she shifted to a strategy of performative change. In May, she sent an email describing her journey of self-reflection and realization of past mistakes, complete with quotes from self-help books and promises of transformed behavior. What was notably absent, however, was any specific acknowledgement of how she had hurt me or any concrete plan for making amends. It was, as Dr. Winters helped me see, a sophisticated form of love bombing, an attempt to draw me back into the relationship without addressing its fundamental dysfunction. My response was carefully crafted with my therapist's guidance. I appreciate your interest in personal growth. I need actions, not words, and a substantial period of consistent boundary respect before considering any contact. Please continue to refrain from attempts to communicate through third parties. The relief of setting and maintaining these boundaries has been profound. For the first time in my adult life, I make decisions based solely on my own needs and values, not on anticipated family reactions or demands. I've discovered interests and passions that had been submerged beneath the constant stress of family management, hiking, photography, community volunteer work, and even dating. Something I had unconsciously avoided while emotionally entangled with my family's needs. In June, I took my first international vacation, 2 weeks in Portugal, wandering through ancient cities, sampling local wines, and sitting by the Atlantic Ocean watching sunsets with no schedule or obligations. I sent myself a postcard that now hangs on my refrigerator. To Autumn, you deserve this life you're building. Keep going. Financial freedom has translated into emotional and psychological freedom as well. Without the constant drain of supporting 3 adults, I've been able to reduce my working hours slightly, creating space for self-care and community involvement. I joined a nonprofit board focused on financial literacy for young women, sharing lessons from my own expensive education in family financial boundaries. My relationship with money has transformed. Previously, I saw my income primarily as a resource to secure family approval and connection. Now I recognize it as a tool for creating the life I want, a life that includes generosity, but generosity by choice rather than coercion or manipulation. This new chapter hasn't been without difficult moments. Holidays remain emotionally charged, though I've begun creating new traditions with chosen family, friends like Leah who show up with consistency and reciprocity. Mother's Day was particularly challenging, but I spent it volunteering at a women's shelter rather than drowning in regret or resentment. The most valuable lesson of these 6 months has been learning to distinguish between guilt and responsibility. I am not responsible for my family's financial situations or life choices. I am responsible for my own well-being and for creating relationships that nurture rather than deplete me. As Christmas approaches again, I feel a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The anniversary of trauma can reawaken old wounds, but it also provides an opportunity to measure growth and healing. This year, I've rented a cabin in the mountains where a group of friends will gather to celebrate the holiday. There will be no obligation gifts, no performance of gratitude, no underlying current of transaction, just genuine connection and shared joy. Sometimes I still wonder what might have been different if my mother had opened the door that day instead of turning me away. But I've come to recognize that closed door as one of the most painful yet valuable gifts I've ever received, the gift of seeing clearly what had been obscured by hope and habit for so many years. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns from your own life, remember that financial support without respect is just exploitation with a family label. Blood relationships don't entitle anyone to drain your resources or diminish your worth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to close the account and open your heart to healthier possibilities. Thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection and recovery. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more conversations about building healthy boundaries and authentic connections. Drop a comment sharing one boundary you're proud of establishing in your own life. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, healing isn't linear, but it is possible, one brave step at a time. Until next time, this is Autumn Bailey, wishing you relationships built on mutual respect and genuine love.